Okay, strange. I think we're going. I think we're rolling. I think we're rolling. All right. Oh boy, welcome back to the Bees Like That podcast. As always, I'm your host Chris. What up, y'all? Hey, it's been a minute, man. It's been a hot minute. Say, it's been about 9 days since I filmed an episode. Like, I haven't even been in the space physically and mentally I thought about it. I've written some things. I'm always writing things. Well, do we write anymore? I put thoughts in my notepad on my phone. Anyway, let's jump right into it. As many of you know, and as I've shared recently on Facebook, one of my older brothers passed away last Friday. Don't have a ton of detail about exactly the circumstances leading up to it, and all the other stuff. But I've been on the fence about how I wanted to, or if I was going to address this in an episode. And I think that in keeping with the culture that I've worked really hard to build and establish, one of being transparent and honest about the things that impact me in my life, I decided, well, I might as well. So I don't have any full siblings, meaning my siblings and I don't share the same mom and dad. Either we share the same mother or we share the same father, not both. So, as most of y'all who know me know, all of y'all who know me know this about me. They know that my mother is white, my dad is black, was black. He's dead now. And from my mother, I have had an older brother, and I have an older sister who's still alive. My sister and I don't speak a lot, not because we don't get along. It's just, as you get older, people get families, and she lives on another side of the state, so it's not like I can just drive to her house. I suppose I do have her number. We have each other's contact info. Life just gets lifey, just bees like that. However, my brother and I, our relationship was a bit more complicated than that. Growing up, life was pretty tough on all of us, but my brother in particular had a pretty rough go. He had some mental health issues that made life different for him. So when he was a kid, and this is back in the 80s or late 80s, early 90s, but back then, especially if you were poor, seeking a diagnosis, I don't know that it was difficult, but an accurate one probably was a bit harder to come by. So back then, my brother was diagnosed with what they call a disability. I think today, were he to be reassessed or re-diagnosed, that he certainly would be found, they would find him to be somewhere on the autism spectrum for sure. He was overstimulated very easily. He couldn't handle a lot of, stimulus and input at once. He would short circuit really quickly. This kept him from forming any real relationships with people, any real meaningful ones. Now, I say meaningful relationships the way that you and I might understand them. I don't know. Maybe in his life, in the last 5 or 10 years, maybe I'm incorrect, and he had to him what he would define as meaningful relationships. I don't know. But according to the standards that you and I would define them, this was a challenge for him. Meaning he didn't date, he didn't have any kids, he never had like a serious romantic relationship. It was just him. And that was pretty rough. And socially, he was just kind of an outcast growing up. Got made fun of a lot. He was different. You know, just all of the stuff, right? So it was tougher on him, I think, in that way than it was for me. Certainly. But anyway, even given all of these things, back then our relationship was we were a bit closer. It was harder for me back then, especially as a kid who, growing up with just my dad and I. After my mom left, it was just my dad and I, from 2 until 9. I mean, my dad had different partners, but mainly it was my dad and I, and you know, the random drug addicts. But anyway, during those years, we weren't very close. But then when my mom came back, I moved out of my dad's place and in with my mom, my brother, and my sister, and my mom's ex-husband. And that was different. But anyway, back then I didn't really understand, because I'd not A, grown up with other children in my house, and B, I didn't grow up in a white household, and now all of a sudden I was thrust into one. And C, I'd grown up around like addiction and other like issues, but not mental health issues the way that my brother had them. So that was definitely a culture shock for me. Nonetheless, as things do, you know, even in chaos, you find a semblance of a groove, so to speak. So that happened, and you know, we had a relationship, and I can say that aside from the challenges that my brother had, in his, like at his core, who he really was, not when he died, but back then, he was sick for sure, but very sweet, not violent at all. I mean, the kid had a mouth on him. You would think that, but he didn't have a mean bone in his body. He was a little butthole. But when it came down to like just the essence of a person, you know, like, and as he grew into like young adulthood and then adulthood, he aged out of a lot of the things that he went through when he was a kid. A lot of the more significant like temper outbursts. He still had those. They became less and less severe and less frequent. I guess to a degree he learned how to control his environment in a way that he wasn't triggered as much. And, you know, with age comes different stages of progression. But it certainly, as he grew into an adult, like through his 20s and most, if not all of his 30s, I mean, he had apartments here and there, but mainly like he slept in his car and he would stay at friends' houses, or I would see him every once in a while, and I would, you know, wherever I was staying, I would bring him. He'd come and kick it with me for a few days, and then, you know, that was usually enough for the both of us, and he would head his way, and, you know, I'd be like, all right, buddy, I love you, and, you know, keep it moving like that. But especially during that time, just definitely troubled, definitely had his challenges, but just a really, really sweet, kind, and gentle guy. Just not a mean-spirited person. He did a lot of really foolish things to fit in. looking for acceptance, and looking for a sense of community. That was something that he always really, really struggled with. So I would do my best to cut him as much slack and offer him as much grace there as possible, because it was that part of it in life was just really hard for him. So, I mean, he would embellish stories and, make shit up and just ridiculous movie scene shit that you would be like, come on, bro, you did not get into a fight with 6 dudes and do a flip. But these are the kind of stories that he would tell, and you would just kind of shine it on, like, yeah, all right, bro, whatever, man. But knowing in the back of your mind, like, this guy, he's not a person that you would ever have to worry about, like, doing anything violent to you or hurting your kids or, I don't know. He just, back then, was a really sweet guy. Just had his problems. Towards the end of his life, we came back together. And I was in the the lowest points in my active addiction, going through a lot. And he's been like late stage alcoholism for at least 15 years. But so we encountered each other after a lifetime of different things, for both of us at really inopportune moments, especially the last one. So I hadn't made any efforts to communicate with him at all over the last 5 years since I got clean. One of the reasons for that is because one day, while we were all at my mom's place and all of the kids were there, and he and I had not been getting along at all, and in front of everyone, the most concerning part, the kids, he, went into just some really hurtful, derogatory language, some really racist stuff. I won't get into specifics, but if you have any form of imagination, you could probably guess. And these are things that, even if I were not in active addiction, I couldn't allow to stand. I'm not saying that day I wanted to hit him, but not saying that would be the resolution or optimal solution. Not today. But when I say I couldn't allow that to stand, I have my children watching me. These things, I'm a part of them. So when he's insulting me, then he, by default, is insulting a part of them and calling them these negative and racist remarks. So I couldn't allow that. I couldn't allow that energy to have access to me, my life, my peace. So I made a decision that we just weren't going to be in communication with each other. I didn't know how long that would be. I just hadn't found it in my heart to forgive. Like, I hadn't forgiven him for that stuff. If y'all watch the channel, then you could probably guess why. Because these racial equality and equity issues are really important to me. So even in my active addiction, we all have things that are still really important to us. Like I say, it felt like a deal breaker at the time. And over the last 5 years, I would get sporadic messages through social media, much of the same stuff, just bitter and mean and no real cause for it, just abusive. And that would just kind of solidify my position and be like, well, I have to give this to God and let my higher power have you, because I can't give you access to me in that way and have that energy jeopardize my peace. So that is where our relationship stood when he passed away. And that is really unfortunate. Because not all of my memories are negative like that. They're not all painful like that. I was just sharing with my wife the other day that one of the trips that my dad and I took of many to Michigan, my dad's home state. When I came back, I'd been gone. This was a longer trip, and I'd left and come back, and my brother had gotten a bit taller. His hair had grown out. I mean, his haircut, man, come on, dog. I came back with a Jerry curl. This fool had like a mullet, like it was all feathered, like Patrick Swayze. Y'all gotta remember, this is like the late '80s too. So I had the Jerry curl. Came back, this fool had a mullet. But anyway, I remember being really excited to see him. Right, like it felt good to see him, and it felt good that he was excited to see me, and he'd been looking forward to seeing me. We talked on the phone a bit that time when I was in Michigan, but not a lot. So it was cool, man. And he was ready, when I got home. And I remember that day too, because I get there, my dad dropped me off at my mom's place, and I see him, and he's like, hey, we embrace, give hugs, and we're talking for a while. And he's like, well, come on, I got plans for us. We're going to go ride these go-karts. I was like, what, go-karts? So anyway, long story short, we go to his friend's house. They'd spent the summer while I was in Michigan building a couple of go-karts. And I don't know, man. It's just, I just highlight that memory as one out of many that I think is pretty cool, and that I'm really happy that I have. Because the other ones, they're not as cool. Yeah, especially the last experience, it's not as cool. Yeah, so last Friday, I just laid down. Well, no, I'd been laid down for a while, but I just shut the TV off. Friday's like, I'll stay up a little bit later and I'll shut off. I won't set an alarm because I just plan to wake up naturally the next day, kind of catch up on some sleep and recover a bit. I have some pretty intense training days on the weekend, so I like to do this. This is a good practice for me. It works. But I remember it was about, I don't know, 11:30, quarter to midnight. My wife comes in and she was like, hey, are you awake? And I was like, I was kind of in and out, just laying here. She was like, I need to tell you something. I was like, what's up? She's like, your brother just died. And I sat up. And like, I was like, it should have occurred to me which one, because he was the most unhealthy. But I have another brother who's been really struggling in the last few years. So I wasn't sure who it was. And I said, which one? And she said, Matt. And I was like, what? And she said, yes, I just talked to your niece, and I guess he just fell over in your mom's living room dead. And I just laid there, and I was like, wow. And then in that second, like, you get news like that you can never prepare for. Like when my dad died, he'd been sick for a really long time, and we knew that he was on borrowed time, and I knew that it was coming relatively soon, being in communication with the VA hospital, moving him to palliative care. Like, this was the plan. We're transitioning him to death, right? But that wasn't the case with my brother. I guess he'd just been at my mom's place and in the living room watching TV, got up to use the bathroom, left the bathroom, came back and just collapsed face down on the living room floor and was dead. They speculate that he was dead before he even hit the ground, because he didn't try to break his fall or move, just dead. And it's such a... Life and death is such a peculiar thing, right? Because right now, you listening to this and me talking to you about this stuff is, I mean, you're listening, and if you support the podcast, and you may have certain emotions behind this, and maybe you experienced something like this with a family member. grief and all of this stuff that I see are really odd and peculiar ways that we are compelled to grab a hold of and cling to our mortality, or like, and I mean, yeah, ours. I mean, we lose someone and we want to grab at them and their memories and things that we don't want to lose because we're clinging to that sense of mortality, the tangible realness that we, as human beings, crave, no matter the fact that there are two dates in the way that I worship God. There are two dates that we believe that are recorded instantly. So the day that you're born and the day that you will die, day and time that you will die, that's already known. It's written. Even though that is true, even I still live my life as though anything that I do here will afford me 1 second more. When that's not true. I will not be able to die a fraction of a second earlier or a fraction of a second later, other than what has been written for me. This experience is finite, no matter what. And it's just so strange that one day someone can, my brother that day was, there, alive, talking to my mom, and then that night, just gone. Just gone. And the same thing will happen to me. The same thing will happen to all of you. I mean, how it will happen, I don't know. I hope that, I'm not sure if my brother's passing was painless, but it seemed to be very quick. It seemed to be painless. My mom said he didn't call out. He just wasn't there. We can only hope that that same thing will happen for all of us. That it's not painful. But who knows? Who knows? But yeah, anyway, the support and condolences and well wishes, from everybody they've been appreciated, because it's never easy. I mean, even with the knowledge that, life has a cycle. We all are born, we all live, and we all die. Even though that is true, it still is never easy. And I'll be honest with you, as angry as I was at my brother for the way things had been left the last time that I'd seen him, I wasn't sure how I would feel when or if this day came. And it's rather unpleasant to have unresolved issues with someone, and not that prayer isn't powerful, but having that be the only way left now to process that stuff. But I'm thankful that I have other memories with my brother that aren't as painful and negative. I am heartbroken for him, though. Because the sudden nature in which he passed, it didn't allow for him to communicate with anyone. It didn't allow for him to say bye or anything to anyone. No opportunity to make any amends, were that kind of thing on his heart. It's just And I think this is a good opportunity to touch on a part of recovery that many of us, all of us, should live and practice every day, but is a requirement for active recovery, at least active participants in their own recovery. And that is, resolving resentments, not harboring these things and processing them and letting them go. Man, I really do. It's such a weird thing because I'm like, fuck that. Fuck that. I mean, you're not going to call me that, any of that stuff in front of my kids, bro. Like, but then when I think about it, like, thinking about him just laying there face down. He just died alone. And he didn't have to. And he didn't have to go. And I didn't have to. I didn't have to hold on to all this stuff while he was here. I could have let this all go. This is, I think, a very profound, I don't want to say a test, but for lack of a better term, way to evaluate where I'm at in real time in my recovery, right? Because no matter what our relationship looked like, had this been 5-6 years ago, there's no way, I'm positive that this moment today, from that time, I may not have gone to the store that night, maybe, but I'm positive that from that next morning, and like right until now, I would be pissy drunk. Oh man. And I would have, no matter what I had going on, how much clean time I had, life would have, I would have discontinued lifing and adulting, and this would have been my excuse. It's odd to say, I'm proud that I didn't. Because if you can reconcile having a bit of pride in oneself in a situation like this. But needless to say, I didn't use my brother's passing as an opportunity to indulge in any self-pity and relapse and use that as an excuse to relapse. I didn't do that. Connected with my mom, and I have been, and, I talked with my wife and talked with my mom about this stuff, and, in my way with these things, this has just been a process. But clean through it all, man. I didn't have to get loaded because of it. I didn't have to get loaded because life hurts sometimes, And I have friends that have gone through what I think are worse and way more tragic and substantial losses. And watching them do that and go through those experiences clean, I feel supremely grateful that I have these people in my life as examples of strength and fortitude and resolve. Because that, again, is an example for me. And it proves that the promises in this program are real, and that living by spiritual principles manifests positivity and healing in one's life. And that change, transformational change. And I'm talking about the kind of spiritual awakening. Not attached to any religion or religious practice or deity or any of that kind of stuff. That however you want to identify that part of you that you can't define, we usually call it our spirit. That it's not a thing that just, I just fucking got it all of a sudden. No. It is a literal process. It is a change. It is a metamorphosis. It's an awakening. This is what one of the major things that I attribute my being able to remain clean and focused and continuing my work and helping and being of service to community and other people who are in need. Like, I didn't just quit. I didn't run from my pain. I didn't hide. It's because of the power of the principles and the promises in this program and the reality of what a spiritual transformation does to a human being. Right? I don't know. I don't know. I've had thoughts lately that maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a conversation to be had that transformation isn't complete. You know, when people relapse and they continually relapse and continually struggle and fall and can't string together more than 90 days or 6 months or a year, and they continue in this pattern of relapse. You know, I understand it's probably likely more complicated than that, but I think that there's something to the idea that perhaps that transformation just needed one more revolution, you know? Needed to baste just a little bit longer. But hey, I don't know. Is it weird to think that addicts and alcoholics are impulsive and prematurely like make assumptions and assertions and affirmations about being in recovery when maybe we're on our way? I don't know. Separate subject, I guess, but I am thankful. I'm thankful and I'm grateful, man. I'm grateful that, just for everything, man. Everything. Life is good. Life is good, and death is a part of life. Death is a part of life. Doesn't make it easy. Doesn't make it hurt any less. But anyway, I'm out of here, man. If you didn't do it on the way in, please think about doing it on your way out. Hit that like, subscribe, and post notification bell so you can stay up to date on all the cool, wacky, fun, zany, and tomfoolery shit that we talk about here on the It Bees Like That podcast. Peace, y'all.